This week on the College Podcast, Anne Marie and I are joining your usual host, Peg, to share our journeys of guiding our kids through the college process. We'll reflect on what we learned the first time around and what we're doing differently the second time.
Hello, everybody. This is going to be a special edition of our podcast today. So my buddy, Matt Carpenter, he's on a well-deserved vacay this week out in California, soaking up some sunshine. And I am super excited today to have a couple of my CAP colleagues and friends here today. But before I introduce them and we get going here, want to bring up kind of what's been happening since we talked to you guys last. Not a lot around the Department of Education, any big changes there, just what Matt and I have talked about through other episodes. But during this past week, Harvard did respond to the Trump administration's demands and said, we are not going to meet your demands. So if you remember, they had done this with Columbia and said, hey, we're going to cut so much in funding. If you don't do this and this and this, Columbia said, all right, we got it. We're going to take care of this stuff. Harvard has said, no, we are not going to meet your demands. So, and this is several billion in funding. Please remember that Harvard has an endowment, or maybe you don't know this. Harvard has an endowment of pushing 50 billion plus. They do have a nice big endowment. And it'll be, for me, this is going to be really interesting, not to watch what happens with Harvard, but even more importantly, this is a school that said no. So, human nature is following the pack, right? My dad used to always say that, don't be a follower, be a leader. But people tend to be followers. Organizations are going to be watching this. The other colleges and universities are going to be watching and saying, okay, how does this play out for Harvard? We're not Harvard. We don't have Harvard's endowment, yada, yada. But it's going to be interesting to see now they have entered the arena and said, no, we're not going to do what you want. We're not going to play ball with your demands. So it'll be interesting. We'll keep reporting on this, but that's one of the big things that's happened in the last week, just a few days ago. So that is that. So without further ado, we are going to have a super, super awesome episode today. So it's going to be a girl power episode. I have two of my colleagues, Cathy Portele and Anne Marie Sanderson. So just to let you know, these are two of the people among others of my colleagues that make all this stuff happen, right? Matt and I are up here in front of the camera, but none of this happens without everybody else. So Anne Marie is our high school partnership coordinator. So we reach out to high schools all over the country, and she coordinates all of that craziness and makes it seamless, which is huge. That's how we're getting the word out, how we can help families all over the world. So, and then Cathy, she joined us doing something completely different. And it was very obvious that she was very talented in marketing and social media. So she is now runs all of our social media. You probably recognize her, honestly. You've seen her on Instagram. She shoots all these reels and does every time I watch it, I'm like, where did she get this idea from? I'm just always amazed. So, two super wonderful women here today. But the reason why they're here is not the role they play at CAP. It's that we want to have a discussion. You've got three moms here who we've all been through the college piece, and Cathy and Emery are in it now, and they're going to talk about their families, but they're in it now. Well, you have one is about to graduate, Cathy. So then you're out of it for a little bit, and then you're back in it. And then they also have younger kids, right? So as I've shared, I have twins, right? So for me, it was like, get it right or you're done, right? I didn't have a second chance to learn. I mean, I'll share a little bit here and there today, potentially about mine, but what I really want to tap is these guys and just talk about it, because I'm sure we have parents listening that you're in the middle of this. You might have kids in college. You might have kids in high school. Who knows? You might have middle school kids really, Johnny on the spot trying to get all the knowledge you can, which is awesome. So I think parents sharing with parents about their experience and what they learned is hugely powerful. So that's why I thought of this when I knew that that Matt was gonna be out, I thought this will be a great opportunity. So why don't Anne-Marie, why don't you start? Just share share about your family, just so everybody understands like how many kids you have and the ages of them and all that
Sure.
sort of stuff.
So my husband Jay and I have been married for a couple decades, and we have 21-year-old twins. They're juniors in college. One's at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, and then Zach is at Anderson University, which is south of Greenville, near Clemson, and then we also have a 16-year-old daughter who is finishing up her sophomore year of high school. The boys went through public school all the way through. We did all the fun different schools, magnets and such. And then Emily Kate came up, and she's done a little bit of here and there, but we have settled in homeschooling for high school, and I have loved it. And so I'm getting to be her, I like to call it I'm her principal and school counselor more than anything. We do a co-op here in Greenville that's fantastic. And so that's my family
Well, I
makeup.
mean, kudos to you. I would have killed my kids if I homeschooled them.
She's a good teenage
Hands
girl.
down. It would not have. I taught my daughter how to read because her first grade teacher was so awful and it was really pushing the limits. But I'm like, I got to have a kid who knows how to read. Kudos to you because I just couldn't do it. But yeah, so that's interesting. You had public school, your two boys went through public school, and then you've got the homeschool. So you're kind of learning that one. So okay, so what about you, Cathy? What is your home situation?
So we also have three kids, but our oldest, Claire, is a senior at Belmont University, 18 days until graduation, a little panicking on my, but all those things. And then Molly is a junior in high school, and then our youngest, Sam, is finishing up 8th grade and moving on to high school next year.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I think it's so much harder. It's so much harder what you guys have than what I had because I just did it and I was I didn't have to go, oh my gosh, I have this three times. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Okay, so why don't you, Cathy, why don't you take Claire and talk about you were a newbie, right? And how
Yeah.
you and Pat like approached this process with Claire and how it went, what worked, maybe what didn't while you were going through the process with Claire.
So we started the process. Claire graduated from high school in 2021. I thought that I knew what I was doing because, I went to college. I feel like I'm a pretty educated. I like to learn. This should be easy kind of thing. So I think it was January of her junior year. We were deep into COVID at that point, and realized, okay, well, now's a good time to start looking at colleges. And we did what I won't do ever again and said to her, well, I mean, you're a good student. You've worked really hard in high school. Just apply and we'll figure it out. And we did it like, I looked at some of the numbers. I mean, we had a budget. We had saved money. Pat was in the military, so we knew we had some military benefits that we were going to use and figure out the best way to stack things. But we really did. She was dead set on not staying in state, and we were like, okay, if we can make it happen, we'll figure it out. And she did some tours of colleges. She found Belmont, loved Belmont for what it was at that time in her life. And that's when we started looking at the finances.
So what did when she fell in love with Belmont, what was it
What was
that she
it?
loved?
Yeah. It was the feeling, like
So
like
did you guys go? Did you
yeah.
go to campus?
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we did, she did tons of research online. She did lots of different, searches. She sat in on like webinars. She actually met with some professors, like Zoomed with them before she went up there and then went up there for a tour and
So she
did
owned it. Like she
did
really did the mature high school deal. That's good.
she did. Yeah, I mean, there was
Yeah.
some definite prodding and like, what are you doing? Why are you not looking at colleges? She did. I think it's that overwhelmingness of when you're 17 years old and like this is the biggest thing you've ever done in your life, how do you tackle it? Because nobody tells you, and you watch all these other people doing it perfectly, and you know you're not going to do it right. Nobody ever does it right, but you just see the social media side of it kind of thing. But she did. When she went to Belmont, she wanted a small school. She's not in music, but she loves music, and she just felt, I mean, Pat actually took her on the tour, but she was like, I felt like I was at home, like it was just where I wanted to be. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
then started looking at the money.
Well, and kids really do. I've noticed that through the years and with mine. Like, we all know, like, sometimes you walk into a place and you're like, this is just isn't me. And even though they're 17, 18 years old, they can do that too. And yeah, it's got to be their home for the next 4 years. So I just want to prod you a little on because the we'll just make it work. Like, I've been doing this for so long. And I mean, just being the nerdy financial planner that I am, I can't get my head around it. And I mean, you've got a hubby who's a vet, organized, very structured. So did you know anything about it when you kind of were like, yeah, we'll just make it work? I mean, you could see price tags to know. I mean, it
Right. But
was less expensive then than now, but it was still decent money.
I want to say though that like when she started looking at colleges and just like Googling and, websites, and I didn't pull up numbers. I just said, go look and like learn some stuff and then come to me with what you're looking at. And I think that's when I said, okay, now let's look at some numbers. And I always knew, I mean, we knew that we wanted to be able to help our kids through college. That's something that like that was part of a plan that we set back in action, when they were babies. But we also knew like going into debt was not what we wanted for ourselves or for our kids. So we also knew that if the numbers weren't going to work, and we had this conversation before it got too far down the line, that if the numbers didn't line up, like you're going to have to pivot. Like she did build a list of options that were all options that she wanted to go to. So if Belmont hadn't worked out, she had like 3 or 4 others that, okay, well, this is second best kind of thing. And it'll
And
work too.
did you, so you did have other options. So it wasn't like, we'll just make it work with Belmont no matter
Correct.
what.
Correct. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was not like that was my first talk track was go figure out where you want to go to college and we'll figure it out. But it was never going to be, oh, it's a blank check.
Right. So if Belmont didn't work, you did set the expectation,
Yeah.
like we're
Yeah.
going to sit down and talk about it. You just didn't know what you could expect ahead of time. Is that what you will change with Molly? Is that you have some idea? You can never totally nail it down, but is that a big change you would make with
It
Molly?
is. I mean, and we've already done it. I mean, we probably did it last summer now that we've got the tax returns from this year, we have used MyCap and we've put the numbers in, and I show her like this is why now. And our situation has kind of changed a little bit just with some of our benefits that we have. So to me, it's easier to put boundaries up in the beginning. And I mean, I know so many parents are like, why would I put boundaries on my kid? They're going to college. This is a big deal. But it makes it, I think, this is my personal opinion, it makes it so much harder to tell a 16 or 17-year-old, the world's your oyster, go wherever. And, 4,000 plus colleges, like that's too much. I mean, that's too much for me to like even think about. So to say, here's your boundaries, like now look in these boundaries, and I know you're going to be able to find something it's your home for 4 years, like you were saying, Peg, but it's not the rest of your life. Like it's a stopping point on the journey of life. Like I think
Yeah,
that's
it's a chapter. It's a
right.
chapter. And, the kid needs to feel comfortable where they're going. But the bottom line is every campus, there's stuff to leverage. I don't care if they're ranked, they're unheard of. It doesn't matter. Like my daughter went to James Madison University. People out here in Seattle, they're like, what's JMU? Like they've never even heard of it. And she just had a phenomenal experience. She's like a trauma therapist at the leading trauma hospital in Seattle. Like there were other schools she got into that were more name brand, but they weren't as good a fit. And the finances came into it. But all of you, all the listeners, your kids, right? So there even could be a school that they're all fired up about that isn't a good fit for them. For it's too small, it might be too stressful, whatever it is. And so I think that's great. I think it's great that you weren't totally like frou-frou, we'll make it work. You had some guidelines there, but now you'll even have more with Molly. So I think that's great. Okay. All right. So now to you, Amory. So you started with Charlie and Zach right off the get-go. So like me, you were just, in the frying pan with two. So take us through how, the
Right.
two boys, and they're different. I know they're different because my kids are really different.
Well, and I am like the poster child for the mom that stuck her head in the sand and was like, it'll just all work out. And I just didn't, I don't know, like I had focused on their education from very small and making sure that that was right with the idea that it would all just fall into place for college. I just didn't really think about that. And my boys were musicians. So I thought, they have all these great things going on. They're smart and they're going to just get in, and quickly realized that college was not the same process as when we went to school. Like price tags, I didn't even know about a net price calculator. I feel embarrassed to even say that now in the field that I'm in and how much I'm on this side of it, but I just didn't know. I didn't know that that was even a thing.
But
Now,
colleges don't publicize it, right? It was
no, no.
mandated. So the transparency thing is not big on their list. So you shouldn't beat yourself up about that. For people that don't know what Anne-Marie's talking about, net price calculators are on every college's website. If you Google it, that's the best way to find it because it's hard to find it when you go to the homepage. They're supposed to give you an idea of the affordability, but more often than not, they're outdated and they're not because the government mandated it, over a decade ago, but there's no oversight. So that's what she's
Yeah.
referencing. So yeah,
And I
go
just
ahead.
didn't know, and my boys are very different. I have one who you put it in his head, and he had a teacher that said if you play the viola, when he was trying out instruments in middle school, he said he wanted to go to Yale. She said, well, if you play this instrument and you get good at it, certain schools will give you money to go and play viola. And so he took that and literally ran with it. And that's what he really became excellent at, and had to go through the whole music process, the audition process, which is a whole nother piece to college admittance. And so for us, I had to ask him. He was literally pulling me along and saying, well, Mom, he put together his list based on where he knew was academically strong, but also the music teachers that he wanted. He ended up in voice and viola, and certain schools just didn't fit that bill. So he was able to do that. But then we chose for me to stay home primarily when they were all the way through school and be a one income household. So we didn't put aside money for education like I would have done now if I looked back and just sort of built on that, but with the expectation that we would help them find scholarships. And we thought they've got academics. They're fantastic, and Zach's a saxophone player, and Charlie's a viola player and can sing. So they would get these things, and ultimately they got Charlie did. Charlie did the research, and he it came down to a college in Boston and a college, a couple other colleges, Nashville and Columbia. Ultimately, what we kind of laughed about was we learned really quick that private schools were going to give him more scholarship because they had that movement. He really excelled in not only his academics, but he excelled in his music. So they were able to match that. And when it came down to it, it came between the school in Boston, because we have family there, and the school here close by. And the school here close by, the more expensive school, was able to they are paying him to come to school. And he's really excelled there, and he loves it. He couldn't be happier. And Zach, on the other hand, talking about a kid that walked on campus and said, this is home. I love it. I feel like I walk around campus, people are saying hi. And he ultimately chose to only apply to that school. And he is that kid. Like, he'll make it work, however, but ultimately he's going to come out of school with school loans. And so that's been an interesting lesson in parenting young adults. And we can only give them the information. We can't make them make the choices. And so he has found his home. He's loved it. It's been beautiful for him. It's really created him as a man, but he's going to have some tough things financially when he comes out because he made some of those choices. So, and I think that's the big thing with twins is like, not everybody's path is the same. I think that's for everybody's kid, but especially when we're going through it at the same time and trying to follow that path and letting them make their own choices on their own.
Okay, so when it came to the financials with him, you let him make that choice. And do you feel like he knows what he signed up for as far as much as a 17 or 18-year-old can
Yeah.
understand it,
No, I
right?
don't think he did. I mean, I think and I honestly let him as a whole nother, a whole nother thing. As much as my husband tried, like I said, I kind of let him take on, he did a beautiful job of working with them because I was sticking my head in the sand and kind of la 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 emotionally going, how am I going to let my boys go away? And luckily he had the foresight to kind of have some of those conversations with him, but ultimately I don't think he knew. I think he knows now as a junior, and he's deciding he's going to graduate a semester early because, well, that's going to cut some of his loans off and he's ready to get into the workforce. But when we were talking about this, I don't think he knew to what extent it would look like by the end. And I
Yeah.
can't say I necessarily did either. I laugh because my dad, who was in charge of my education all those years ago, when he hears how much these boys are paying each semester, he's like, that's for a semester of college. He's just
That's not for
overwhelmed.
2 years.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's just changed so much.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So it's interesting because your boys were just really, I mean, some
Mhm.
of it is just the way it played out, right? The one school, because you said Charlie's the one that's like pretty much all the costs are covered, and Zach's
Mhm.
the one. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting because I don't think any kid like we have in our software that kind of puts it in your face, like this much loans, this is the payout. I actually think some parents look at that and it's like, yeah, we'll figure it out. I even think Matt likes to say, oh, this is for the kids to see. And I'm like, it's for the parents to see too, with what just all my years in financial planning. So it's interesting that the boys, they just ended up with different financial outcomes, but it wasn't really because of a lot of research done. It was like it just happened for Charlie that that's the thing when it comes to merit and talent and these scholarships for our listeners, like there's subjectivity here. Like some schools, it's automatic. It's like you have this and this, grades, test scores, you get this, or we give every kid this amount. But when it comes to your kids with the arts and music, what could be more subjective, right?
And I
So
had no idea that process even played into it. And while Charlie made his list ultimately based on a bunch of things, including cost, and then his final decision came down to cost, I think it is fascinating to like just watch that all kind of play out. Zach chose not to play his instrument when he got to school, even though he thought he would. And so, and having the conversation, okay, even if you get a scholarship, you have to keep your grades. Like those are things that I think are important to also have the conversation, and not when it's 3/4 of the way through the semester and you're like, wait, bud, you have to keep this bar, this standard, or you're not going to have that money. And I
yeah.
think that's another conversation it's hard to have, especially when you're in the middle of it. So having that early on when you get the scholarship, and to really say, hey, this is awesome, but I want you to see that if you don't keep your grades up and you don't focus on this, that scholarship can go away and you pay that money. And I think that's also another important thing we didn't necessarily talk about.
Well, and you pay that money. I mean, we're not going to go deep into loans right now, but there's only so much that the student has only in their name, right?
Right,
So it's like you pay it isn't even totally accurate after
right. You're right.
$27,000. So
You're right.
that's a whole thing. And that's a fine line. It's a great point. It's a fine line to walk because I had a good friend who her daughter went to this school, had merit. And it's like, you got to keep your merit or else you'll have to transfer. And I think it wasn't a good fit school personally for her, and she was smart enough to keep her merit, but she stressed, like she got in her head, and
Sure.
so she didn't she left after the first semester. It was a combination of not being a good fit, but I think she was also very stressed Mom was probably a little bit too much reminding her that, but it is something to keep in mind. I mean, schools don't require you to have a 4.0 to keep your merit. I don't know how
Right.
it works when you have a music scholarship and stuff like that. I mean, that, all of a sudden you're not going to not know how to play the viola. So
Sure.
I don't know how that works. But with the academic ones, which are the common ones, obviously, yeah, there is a standard. It's usually not super high, but for every kid, I watched it with my two. It's a step up to go to college, and it should be. We're paying all this money. Like my son, 394, unweighted, just kind of breezed through high school and, took calculus BC, AP BC and complained. I'm like, dude, you can work. He went to Indiana University, go Hoosiers,
Go
and he
Hoosiers.
busted his butt to graduate with like a 3.7. And I was happy to see it. And it was nice to see my daughter, who busted her butt through high school, to be on Dean's List the whole time at JMU because she was really in her sweet spot of what she was studying. But I mean, the point is, like, you have to work. These kids have to work. It's a step up. And so, again, your kids. Like, kids nowadays are much more stressed than, I mean, I don't know about the two of you. You guys are younger than I am, but like, I was just this happy go lucky, whatever kid, right? I mean, I did stupid stuff, got in trouble, worked hard at school, but nothing was super. I was lucky that I didn't have divorce or any issues like that I had to grow up with my family. But there just wasn't this level of stress around being a super kid and excelling all the time. We were allowed to be kids, and that's a whole nother podcast. But nowadays, it's just not the case. So if these kids are stressed out of high school and then it's a step up for everybody, but then it's like a major step up, it might not be the place for them. So all right. Well, thanks both of you. Really valuable, I think, experience in the music piece. So let's talk about, you touched on this a little bit, Cathy, with Molly. So as you're playing this out with Molly, what are the key things that are different with her versus, you touched on it, but can you go a little bit more detail, like how with Molly, how is it different? And how is that gonna, for your mindset and for your hubby, Pat's mindset, how is that gonna help you? Maybe you were sleeping at night with Claire, but, get better sleep.
Well, now I feel like we have our heads wrapped around it better. Like I said, we've told Molly, yes, we have money for college. These are kind of, I think our family is in a unique situation just with some of Pat's military benefits, some of the benefits that we have in state. So
Are you telling them how much you have for college? Like, are you saying, hey, we have a whatever 529 or this money earmarked?
I mean, we've said we have a 529, and that money will get used for college, but we also like we're going to leverage our military benefits as well. So,
Yeah, of
and
course.
the
Yeah.
way for us, her staying in state covers a lot of what we need as far as the money goes. So, like I've kind of said to her, you can look out of state, that's fine. You can look at the private schools, but here's the money factor. It's going to cost so much less to go in state for you, for our situation, because everybody's unique, right? Like you said, Anne-Marie, private for your boys was a much better deal. For our situation, I think public's going to be a much better deal. So just to say, yeah, go ahead. And I think this is where I continue to like second guess myself because I've now pigeonholed Molly into only look in state. Here's the really best price. Like, we're going to get a deal, man. She's like, so I can't look anywhere else. I can only look at like these 5 schools. So, there's always something that like I
Yeah,
control
well,
too much.
doesn't she say to you, doesn't she say, Mom, what the heck? Claire's not in state. I mean, I'm sure that comes up, right?
She does, but I think that's the great thing about having a second one
Yeah.
and the third, like they're watching,
Yeah.
like Molly and
100%.
Sam are watching Claire's experience. Like Molly has said, I don't think I want to be that far away. I want to be able to
Hmm.
come home and see you guys more often. Or I like the people I'm in high school with for the most part. Like I've got great connections. I'm okay if I'm at the same school with them.
Yeah.
Like Molly wants a big rah-rah school and a football team. Like that's important to her. It was not important to Claire at all. So I think, each kid is different. So like you said, Peg, like they know what they want. Maybe they can't put the finances behind it, but they know what feels right, at least in
Yeah.
this part of their lives. So I think we have set her up saying, we have a certain amount of money. I don't need to tell you the exact amount, but let's look at the schools and then let's look at the numbers and let's look at what you are thinking you're going to major in because, I learned from Claire that doesn't always stick the first time around.
Yeah, that's
Totally fine.
very
She's
common,
graduating
very
4 years.
common.
We're good. Yeah. And then like on top of that, so then let's look at scholarship options. What does that look like for you in from the school and what can you be doing now? Her situation right now is I think she's narrowed it down to like right now she's got two strong choices that she's looking at and but now it's okay, get the SATs up so that you can get in there. Like, let's get your rec letters. Like, we're starting that whole process of, I
Which is
think,
super smart. Getting the rec letters is super, recommendation letters is super smart. Hitting those teachers so that they can
yeah,
kind of be
now.
doing it over the summer, not when they're like super stressed. Cause I remember that with my kids, you just had to be like, you wanted to say, what the hell? Why are you taking so long to write this letter for my kid? But they're doing it for you. So you had to
Yeah,
not do that. Yeah.
yeah,
So that's really
yeah,
smart. So she just dropped a huge gem there. If you have a junior, definitely start working on the essays early and then also talk to the teachers. The teachers, more importantly, because coaches and stuff you can hit anytime, but the teachers are off the grid, right, for the summer. And you guys are in South Carolina. So that's not too long from now. You end earlier than like
yeah,
out here where it's June, and up
yeah.
Northeast it's June. But yeah, that's a huge, huge gem to share. So, okay. So how about you, Anne Marie? So you've got Emily Kate. She's finishing freshman year now, right?
Sophomore year.
Oh yeah, because you said she's 16.
Yeah,
So
so she
yeah,
did
so you're getting into that sweet spot time to start digging in.
right.
So
And I
how
know
will it
just
be
enough.
different? I mean, you know so much more just because of your job and everything. So that's a huge positive, but maybe positive, maybe not in certain
Well, I was
ways.
gonna say it's like a double-edged sword because now I'm like, I look back and I go, oh, if I'd only known that with the boys. But now I'm looking at Emily Kate. But not only am I her mom, I'm her school counselor. As a homeschooler, there's not somebody standing over us, kind of keeping us in those deadlines. So I,
Now, let me
I
tell you, in public school, that didn't happen anyways, because those poor public schools, it's not a slam on the counselors. I mean, they had so much on their plate that parents, in my opinion, I know in private schools, because I know a lot of people that do it in private schools. I mean, you're paying $40,000, you should have the hand holding, but families need to own it no matter what. But yeah, that's another thing. You're the counselor too. Like it's
yes.
just
So,
homeschooling. Yeah.
but I am grateful because there were school counselors in Charlie and Zach's life that at least nudged them. So I'm the nudger. So we get in the car and poor Emily Kate, it's windshield time. And she's like, kind of rolls her eyes because she knows because I'm like, okay, so I am really more cognizant about, well, what are you thinking? Like what? And I had to finally come out to her this week and just say, do you have a college that you kind of think you might want to look at? What do you want to be close? Do you not want to be close? So we're sort of talking right now about that. But I also have been able to have that conversation way more open because she's watched Zach and Charlie, that I've been able to say, Emily Kate, we're going to help you do all these things. Jay's saying to her, you need to be applying for scholarships. We want to look with you, but we don't have a whole bunch of money set aside for you. So this is where this is going to be that decision of, she wants to be a school counselor, ironically. And so talking about dual enrollment and what classes are going to feed into that, so that if she does choose to go where she wants, it might be a year shorter than maybe that 4-year time, just to save her some money. But we're really looking at what high school looks like, because I'm a really firm believer in, be the age that you are, when you're in high school, be a high schooler. And when you're in college, be a high school or a college student. But at the same time, we're sort of looking at, okay, how can we help you do some of those gen eds now so that when you do get to college, you really can, like your daughter, jump into the stuff that you really are interested in and make the most for your, most bang for your buck. So that's how
Yeah.
I'm sort of looking at it with her a little differently.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's just, and I say this all the time, and it's just me, but like modeling how to approach a big thing like this, like the financial piece, of course, but just in general, how to approach a big project and handle it. It's just, I don't think all of us as parents realize how much our kids are watching your older kids in school and seeing how that plays out. They pay attention. They pay attention. You guys both commented that Claire, they're watching Claire, Emily Kate's watching her brothers, and they watch us. They watch us. I'll never forget my son. He was, not far at IU, and he was a direct admit into the business school there. And he called us and he was on speaker and he said, Mom and Dad, thanks so much for teaching me what you taught me, because I can't believe these kids, they're just like starting to study for their accounting test like 3 hours before. And then they don't get a good grade and they need this class to get into the business school because he's stressing for them. And I kind of looked at my husband. I was like, finally, like something, all this
Yes.
stuff we do for 18 years, but they're watching us. So you guys approaching this and not methodic, but having a way of approaching a big project on the financial side, but also just how do you figure out what your next chapter is going to be? Like maybe for some kids of our listeners, it's not 4-year school. Maybe it's 2-year. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
gap year. Maybe it's, I just don't want to do any of it. I mean, apprenticeship, whatever it is. And I think it's so valuable. I think we forget because there's so much eye rolling that our kids really do watch us and they do learn from us. So I think that's hugely powerful too, is when we do. I mean, I always say the prudent financial decision making because I just believe in that so strongly that's you give your kids a leg up if they can do that as adults. But all of it is super powerful. And I thought this was super interesting for me because I just the whole concept, I didn't have it, like Shannon and Brennan were doing it together. They don't watch and see what the other one does. So I think that's really powerful. And I never thought of it until you guys both shared, that Molly and Sam are watching Claire and like, I want to do that like Claire did it, but not so much this one, that kind of thing, and same with Emily Kate. She gets to watch her brothers and she knows they're different. She knows their personalities and she sees how they're interacting with everybody and hears the conversations that you and Jay are having. So it's really powerful. So before we wrap up today, why don't you, each of you, just if we came on at the beginning and I said, just share one thing with our audience that you want them to know, what would that be? And I didn't tell you this question because I told you I'm not going to tell you everything because I want it to be spontaneous. So
Uh,
I mean, how much
and it
time do
could
you
be
have?
it could be similar to what you've already shared. It doesn't have to be a brand new thing, but if there's like one key takeaway for the moms, dads, guardians that are listening, kids.
ooh, I got that one. So I would say take a deep breath. What I'm doing differently with Emily Kate that I did not do very well with Zach and Charlie is remind myself that it will all work out and that they will land where they need to land. Even if it's so different than what you picture, they will end up where they're supposed to. And as long as you are transparent and open with them and that allow them to really kind of take the lead in that. And I ultimately know that the relationship is more important than anything else. So I think that's the big thing for me is that I learned with the boys that I'm trying to do differently is really keep that relationship at the top priority and everything else will sort of fall into place as long as
I
we're
love that.
transparent.
I love it, love it, love it. Because I always say take a deep breath. And it does. It will all work out. Your kid will end up where they belong. And it just will all work out. Like it's 4 years of their life. This is not the be end all of everything that our society seems to place on it. And so I love that. Okay, what about you, Kathy?
I think first of all, you're not crazy. This can feel so heavy because it's not just this college. Like your kid is leaving and your life is changing from what, I mean, we've been raising these babies since they were little. Now they're 18 and they're just supposed to leave us. Like it's a lot as a mom to deal with, I think. So for me, like what I'm realizing is I'm really not alone in this. I'm not just crazy trying to do this. There's a lot more to it than just picking out a college. And I have to let my kid make some mistakes. Like I have to stop trying to make everything perfect for them. And like if I could pull back a little bit more and micromanage a little less and let them fail forward, I think it's going to make our relationships, like you said, Anne Marie, so much stronger because I'm still there in the background, but I don't have to like carve their path for them.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think it's great that you both said stuff that's more on the emotional relationship side as opposed to, I'm going to have that spreadsheet and it's going to have the 4-year cash flow, because all that's important, but it's very true. Like I've said on a lot of webinars, and I'll never forget when I said goodbye, and I'm sure you guys remember with your kids, like it was very different at each of their schools, but I can get choked up just thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's like they're starting that next chapter. And if you have a sophomore, if you have a senior, you have a junior, our listeners, it goes by so, like, days can be excruciating and annoying, but time just flies, months, and just try and enjoy it. And I totally agree with the not micromanaging, especially when they get, like, when my kids were seniors, I'm like, my husband and I, we were like, nope, you have no curfew, you make your own decisions. Cause I wanted them to screw up. Honestly, I figured they didn't screw up as badly as I did, but they screwed up. And then, like, to your point, Cathy, they were at home and it was like, okay, so that screw up, that's going to cost you $500 on the deductible of the car because I'm not paying it. So they learned, but they were starting to make their own decisions. And that's a big, Carp was talking about it on one of our podcasts, that like the social piece. And I said, it's not just social. It's like, it sounds funny, but you have to figure out, get your laundry done and have it there and all these things that, if you're lucky enough as a kid that your parents take care of for you. So yeah, it goes by quickly, and, doing a little work in the space and understanding it, that's going to help have this quality time with your kids, which is just really important because once they go to college, they're on to the next chapter. Of course, you're always a mom, you're always a dad, forever and ever, but it's different. It's different when you guys know when your kids come back, the way they act, and, they know everything, and I'll do the dishes when I feel like
What?
it.
I
Like,
don't know
nope,
what you're
no
talking
my
about,
house.
Peg.
So anyways, all right. Well, this was great. I hope, I know you dropped some gems. And I think, just to your point, Cathy, just letting people know, it's like we're all in this together. It's hard for everybody. It was stressful for me. It wasn't perfect, even though I had knowledge. So it's a hard arena at different times. And it's this perfect storm of emotions. It's your kids, your money, and they're leaving. You're prepping them for this, but it's like, oh my gosh, it's here. So anyways, thank you so much for being open and vulnerable and sharing. And I was so excited that our audience gets to meet you, knows, the people that are making all of our magic work behind the scenes big time. So check out Cathy all over social media on our Instagram. Follow us on Instagram and you'll see Cathy all the time. All right, guys. Well, have a great rest of the day. And we will see everybody next time. Take care.
Hi, guys. This episode was produced by Eileen Campbell. Thanks so much for joining us and listening in as we shared our personal experiences navigating the college journey. Be sure to tune in next time. Matt and Peg will be back as your regular hosts.